Yeah, so you'll notice that my boot stripe used to be turquoise and now it's yellow. And that's because I had yellow paint and I did not have turquoise paint. And if I was going to buy paint, I'd have to buy it from the marina, and they charge about $150 per quart. And they didn't have turquoise. I said, well, to hell with that. I'll just use some of my existing paint. I had two choices, really. The bright, I don't know, called vivid yellow and like a burnt yellow color, which was my second choice. There's where we are. 22 hours into it, probably 2 days ago. Now it's just about rolling paint on. Okay, so this is the depth sounder transducer. I'm gonna have to look up the correct way to clean that if I just get Scotch-Brite and kind of get down to the brass fitting, because you can paint the brass with bottom paint, but you'll notice my that was 3M 5200 and it did not stick, you know. So I'm gonna take a carpet knife and just cut the edge real carefully. Nothing's leaking inside the boat, so it's not a leaking issue, but it looks bad. I'm gonna cut this excess off and maybe recaulk the edges with a lot less stuff. So, but you can't use solvent-based bottom paints on the depth sounder transducer itself. That's a big no-no. So I can buy, of course, hideously expensive bottom paint that's water-based. Very, very small container just for doing that job, but that's like $15–20 for, I swear, 30 milliliters. It's just boatyard highway robbery, but that's just the way it is. Because I don't think I did much to it before. I don't remember what I did. But anyway, I mean, it wasn't badly grown, wasn't badly overgrown, so whatever I did last time worked. So I think it's worth putting the bottom paint, even if it's expensive. But anyway, so that's the update right now. 22 hours into this mess. Today, this yellow is fairly recent, so I'm not able to put masking tape on it yet. So the yellow is probably already dry to the touch. Oh yeah, got a nice hard sheen finish. So probably in a couple hours we could risk putting masking tape back on that, on the lower half of the yellow, and then paint bottom paint. But for the first gallon of bottom paint, we're just going to start from the bottom up, because we know we can't get really close to the yellow at the moment. And then I'm going to get 2 more cans of bottom paint. And then for the rest of today and tomorrow, that's all this is rolling on bottom paint. And by the end of tomorrow, we'll have painted everything with 2 or 3 coats, with the exception of the areas under the blocks. And so on Friday, maybe Thursday afternoon, I'll arrange to have the yard dog, the travel lift, come and pick me up a little bit and let the guys readjust the blocks under the keel, and then they move these to a new location to enable me to get that spot, because the spots under here, it hasn't been sanded yet. You can actually see a barnacle that hasn't been popped off yet. That's one of the baby barnacles. But so we're still going to need to clean that and slap a lot of paint on it. And that's kind of the SOP when you're in a boatyard. So yeah, getting a lot of 2 coats of bottom paint on today is pretty important. That's what I say. I just painted over a couple of barnacles. Oh my goodness.
And I got that on video.
Yeah, you boys can stay for another boatyard until the next boatyard.
Every last drop. The colors kind of remind me of like the United States National Forest Service. The green and yellow on their freaking ranger vehicles.
Paint a big smoky bear on the side or something. Okay, so a lot of people, what they don't know is how much it costs, right? So you do bottom job and we're doing the work ourselves, so you think it ought to be pretty cheap. And I remember as a kid, you would buy a gallon of paint to paint your house, and it'd be less than $10 for a gallon. This paint, $400 buying here at the boatyard, and that's the deal when you come to this boatyard. You can do your own work, but you have to buy your paints here. Let's not talk about the yellow stripe, okay? We'll talk about that later. Jared, we know nothing, right? All Jared knows is, hey, I showed up, it was already yellow, man. It's like, but it came out okay. It's supposed to be teal, turquoise, and it's much more like a forest green, but whatever. I mean, it's a lot of times when they get in the water, they lighten up. My blue did. So.
Looks good.
Yeah. So next is the propeller. It hasn't been dealt with yet. And we're not going to get the next can of paint until tomorrow this time of day. So we're going to dog off now because the rain's coming. And I'll go get the new anode and then take a damn nap is what I'm going to do. On these curves. It doesn't like to curve. Affirmation from his friends. He's really dying for me to say, man, you got to figure it out, buddy. You're just going to get like a coastal sailor. And I bought a boat called a Glander 33, which was really... Yeah, so... The Russ Harvey Discount Paint Company. If you want help real bad, we provide real bad help. Well, that's true. Hey, so I've been asked several times by a number of people, what's the deal with the paint job? Well, why do I not just have a single color on the boat? Well, it's called dazzle camouflage, and it has been used by warships in the U.S. Navy and the Royal Navy in both World War I and World War II. And you can see here the USS Salt Lake City. That's a World War II ship actually made in between the wars. This is the USS Maryland battleship from World War II, and finally we have HMS Belfast. But in all cases, they were painted with the wartime camouflage paint, and the only reason I do this is because it's kind of a tip of the hat to the men and ladies who served in the military during World War II, and that's really the only reason behind it. I always told myself that if I bought a boat, I was getting painted with dazzle camouflage. I made up the scheme myself. I borrowed a bit of it from HMS Belfast and a bit from the Salt Lake City, but it could have been any of 100 ships of the paint jobs they used. So you might be wondering, what's the dazzle camouflage for? Was it to make the ship invisible? No, it was to confuse people looking through periscopes at our ships. Because when you look at a ship from 8 miles away through a periscope or through a pair of binoculars, it's not always easy to tell what direction the ship is going, how fast it's going, or even what type of ship it is. And this paint job was not intended to render the ship invisible. It was intended to make the ship's course and speed and class, very difficult to identify. That's all there was to it. And so that's why I painted my boat with the dazzle camouflage. I expect to continue doing so. So I don't know if you agree or don't, but that's why I do it. So that's it. Well, just using non-marine grade paint, that whole notion of, if you want to have everything perfect, you'll never leave the dock. That's the basic premise of how I'm treating this entire little project.
That's a damn good shot I have right here.
Oh, cool. Okay, so I was in and out of the boatyard in about 6 days, depending how you count them. The boatyard was very kind and did not charge me for one of the weekend days because it was their issue. They did not operate the travel lift on Saturdays, and I was ready to splash on Saturday, but we splashed on Monday instead. So let's talk about the cost breakdown. Okay, we got here the haul and launch. That's $370. That's again charged by the foot of the vessel. Pressure wash, same deal, by the foot, $148. The blocking was $322. $37, that's $1 per foot for the environmental fee, which is kind of murky. No one really knows what that means because I didn't have any hazardous materials to dispose of, but anyway, they deal with that. And the biggie there is $1,068 for materials, and that is almost 100% bottom paint. That's what it's for. And the yard storage is $370. So that's the cost of what I would say a typical boatyard haul out would cost. What you don't see there is labor. So this is a do-it-yourself boatyard. It's called Cracker Boys Boatyard in Fort Pierce. And they're pretty cool. I had no issue with them. I'd give them a pretty good review, actually. But again, it's a do-it-yourself yard. Hang on a second. Be right out. Fuck. It's a do-it-yourself yard. And as a do-it-yourself yard, you know, they don't... Come on in. Hang on. Fuck. Yeah, okay. That was Harold. That's the thing, when you come up to another boat, you give a shout, and that's how you kind of announce your arrival. And they never, I mean, a person would never know if I'm taking a nap or if I'm trying to film on YouTube, so nothing to get mad about. It's just kind of funny. Where in the hell was I? I really don't remember. The boatyard, you don't pay for labor in this boatyard. If you had paid for labor in a normal boatyard, the typical rate for labor in the U.S. anyway is anywhere between $60 and $100 per hour. So if you figure there's a mechanic to do some engine work or to work on your propeller, your shaft seal, or some laborers to work on paint, and you can figure, you know, you should figure about, you know, $100 an hour, so almost $1,000 a day if it's just one man working. So that can get very, very pricey. So a lot of folks routinely run up bills in the tens of thousands of dollars, depending what they're having done to their boat. Okay, so the total cost was $2,478.11. And I would say that's an average cost and probably nothing to be ashamed about or proud of. One thing I was thinking about, this piece of paper itself is just the invoice, and they call it, this boatyard, they call it the pink slip. And if you don't show that you've paid, you know, and you're settled, they won't give you this invoice or receipt. And if you don't have the invoice, they will not put your boat back in the water. And I know of several cases where there's a marina in town called Riverside where work is done by the boatyard, and then the owner of the boat is contesting the work or the billing. Maybe they overcharged him on something, that kind of thing. If you don't pay what they're asking, they will never put your boat in the water. And they'll just continue to charge you by the day if you keep staying. So going to the right boatyard is pretty important. Even if you end up paying a lot of money for paint, it's really maybe still the cheapest way to go. It just might be. And a lot less stressful, because these people were stand-up folks, and they did exactly what they said they were going to do. They charged me exactly what they said. And it was kind of, it was clean and easy, I would say that. So, in closing, I'm Russ. This is Sailing Vessel Tautog. We're still in Fort Pierce. Today is August 29, I think it is. I'm looking at the calendar, can't quite read it. And Hurricane Idalia is passing up the west coast of Florida as I speak. It's the center of the storm is a full 200 miles away, so I'm not really gravely concerned about getting damaging winds. But we're about to get one of the first outer feeder bands, you know, that, you know, bring the heavy rain and winds. But even so, it's been blowing about 20 knots all day and gusting to 30, 35, not much more than that. And I don't expect much more than that. I have taken precautions and, you know, stripped down all of the topside gear and the sunshades and all that. And the dinghy is in the water, floating with the plug pulled, so it flooded the dinghy. You know, and I did a few minor things, and mostly we just talk a lot amongst the boats in the fleet here in Faber Cove. There's one person who's riding out his first storm, and we're kind of all just, you know, all checking on each other, make sure we're good. And with that, I'll conclude these remarks, and I wish you all well, and I hope the west coast of Florida fares well. And I know Crystal River is a town I used to live in, and I know they're almost going to be directly on the landfall. It's going to get pretty rough over there. They might see winds well in excess of 100 miles an hour and very, very high storm surges. So, feeling grateful in Fort Pierce. And this is Russ, Sailing Vessel Tautog, signing off. Take care. We'll chat next time. Bye.